Hey folks, this is The Constant Show, where we talk about movies, and I am Constant, a new guinea pig. So this week's movie is The Ice Cream Man, which, if you haven't seen it, you probably shouldn't. It's absolutely terrible. What is it? It's a 1995 comedy/horror movie about a killer ice cream man. But there isn't a single element of this movie that works on any level. You would have to strip away so much of it that it would be only recognizable as the barest shell of its performative absurdity. I'm going to do a play-by-play of almost everything that happens, and then I'll do some jokes, and finally my thoughts on the movie. Hope you guys enjoy, and here's the rest of the video.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Like, comment, subscribe. So the movie starts with this horrendous music. It's so bad, I'm fairly certain it's banned by the Geneva Convention. This plays over an ice cream truck getting shot up by 1940s gangsters. I'd really like the backstory to Mr. Frosty getting that Jesse James treatment, but instead we focus on this kid who's traumatized and eating blood-stained ice cream. So the kid grows up and he takes over the ice cream truck. We all know how traumatized people enjoy reliving that trauma 40 plus hours per week. So this traumatized ice cream man, he talks like Little Nicky doing an impression of Christian Bale's Batman. It's like, "Hey kids, did you watch my ice cream? What do we have here? What's my cream?" This film has just started, and it's already straining my suspension of disbelief that anyone would leave their kids unattended around this ice cream man. The ice cream man grabs some change with the physical coordination of a rigged claw machine, and then he serves ice cream over a bucket of just rats and roaches. I guess he just keeps them on standby because you never know when you're going to have to give somebody bad customer service. How nobody notices this throughout the entire course of the movie despite the ice cream having an open window, it's a complete mystery to me. Then we get to meet our heroic ensemble. You know, it's a group of kids, and it's led by Rocket Kid, whose personality trait is he likes rockets. There's Moped Tank, this kid, and his personality trait is he just has no stamina. There's at least 3 or 4 scenes where he's just like, "I can't go on, guys. Go on without me." Then we have Preacher's Daughter and Stock Nerd. There's a 5th kid, but he's not really a part of Team Rocket. So Stock Nerd is in the park and he's reading the Pied Piper. And initially I was like, oh, it's gonna be like a subtle little reference. But then they have a creepy old guy walk over to them at the park and explain the entire story of the Pied Piper. It will go on to reference the Pied Piper at least 7 or 8 more times, just in case you missed the similarity. They run away from creepy old guy after he tells them that the story ends with kids drowning, which I think is a rational response to what's happening here. So creepy old guy is picking up trash in the park with a pointy stick that causes Ice Cream Man to flash back to his time in the asylum, where he was injected with this comically oversized syringe filled with Green Lantern battery acid. Get used to the flashbacks as well, because that's going to happen a lot. Oh, and speaking of things that happen a lot, the creepy old guy gets killed off screen. So Ice Cream Man goes home after a long day of murder on Rochi Road, and this dog starts barking at him. He proceeds to kill the dog off screen, but then he meets his former nurse, current landlord lady, who approaches this role like a background character in an SNL skit. "I have no idea what's going on." There's a dinner scene that mostly serves for Rocket Kid's older brother to tell us how much he hates Moped Tank, which I don't really like the kid either, but at the same time, he goes further overboard than Captain Morgan on a rowboat. The scene ends with Rocket Kid's mom asking him if he knows where 5th Kid is at. Rocket Kid gets put on a curfew. Don't worry, that's not actually going to be relevant at any point in the movie. You can just forget it happened. Flashback to the hospital again. He wakes up in the yard next to these plastic sunflowers as the nurse / landlord lady walks up to him. And she's like, "I expect your rent." And he's like, "You'll have 4 barrels of ice cream." Which, I don't know how anyone eats enough ice cream to justify it being a rent payment. And the economics of this movie are fundamentally broken. The older brother drops Team Rocket off at the strip mall, and they go to see Moped Tank's dad so that they can go get money to go see a movie. Their conversation gets interrupted by a fair woman calling on the phone for Moped Tank's dad, Moped Tank Sr. Then we get to meet the real heroes of our story, the champions among men who are here to solve the case. We have Oblivious Cop, and then there's Clint Axbad. Go to question Ice Cream Man about the disappearances that are happening with the kids, which he would be my first suspect too. However, they only ask him a single question, and he's like, "You got any leads?" And you may recognize this as the exact kind of thing that a murderer would say when questioned about, a disappearance. They're like, "Nah, just keep an eye out in case you see anybody suspicious." The Ice Cream Man is somebody who would make the knuckle hair stand up on Thing T Thing. They, however, just breeze past it and order some ice cream. The Ice Cream Man's thing is that he serves people, Twilight Zone style. I think whenever he was a kid and like the blood hit the ice cream, he had kind of like a weird cannibal rhesus moment. It's about to get a little bit gross here, so if you have sensitive sensibilities, I'm going to include a timestamp for like directly after this part. Cool. Not content to just get away with the 2 to 3 murders, he also decides that he wants to feed the cops person, So he sticks an eyeball in there like a maraschino cherry, and this cop just eats the ice cream like an OnlyFans girl showing off a new tongue ring. It's completely absurd. It drags on for too long, and I think it's kind of like a microcosm for everything that's just fundamentally wrong with this movie. It's not funny because there's not really a joke outside of, look how dumb I made this character. And it's not scary because there's absolutely no tension in this scene. There's no build up to it, he just immediately puts it in his mouth, and it takes like 2 seconds to realize that this cop doesn't know the difference between optic nerves and sprinkles. So it all just feels like a really unproductive gag stretched well beyond its lifespan. Oblivious Cop says that Ice Cream Man is a quick one, but really only comparatively. A fair woman takes a stab at seducing the Ice Cream Man. She's like, "I live over there, come over whenever." What? This continues the trend of characters just having like the one personality trait. They're like the D-list Simpsons characters. Team Rocket orders some ice cream. It's surprisingly mundane considering I just watched somebody French kiss an eyeball for the last like minute and a half now. It kind of feels like you jumped the gun earlier and now you kind of have to slow things down just to like pad out the rest of a movie. Team Rocket goes home. Preacher's daughter is the first one home, and when she goes inside, her mom is having a seizure or speaking in tongues, and her dad says that the Archangel Gabriel is speaking through your mother. I don't know why this is here at all. You had a killer Ice Cream Man. You didn't even need to do this. What? I feel like I'm just watching somebody flip through channels right now. There's not really a context that makes this make sense. It's too dramatic a thing to be a one-off. At the end of the movie, the mom is just like a regular normal person. She's just like walking around. She's definitely not shouting out Archangel stuff in the second. Spoilers, she's not shouting out Archangel stuff in the second half. There's a difference between details adding depth to a story and details being this sort of sideshow, I guess, that detracts from the main focal point of this. Is a whole tangent I didn't have to be on. The way to explain that scene would be like, normally whenever some stuff is going to happen in a horror movie, they just cut out all of the people hanging out and then just get right to the, "Yeah, it was nice seeing you," and then you can just get into the part that people care about. But this one included all the hangout time beforehand. Plot twist. Stock Nerd stumbles across Ice Cream Man in a back alley. What he is doing? He's doing a jig, or trying to summon rain, or walking an invisible dog, or miming blindness at a jazz club. Ice Cream Man guesses Stock Nerd's favorite flavor, which I guess is just like a killer Ice Cream Man superpower. Ice Cream Man lets Stock Nerd look inside of the truck, And thankfully he doesn't see all the body parts that were just like splayed out inside of there earlier. I guess on his lunch break he just cleaned it all up. Stock Nerd then sees the pointy stick thing from earlier, which I don't know why it was on the ground right here. I guess after the murder he brought it with him and then he just threw it out because he didn't even have it when he was dancing. It cuts to Ice Cream Man pulling Stock Nerd into the back of the ice cream truck as Moped Tank like looks on. Ice Cream Man fails charisma check trying to like talk Moped Tank into getting in the back of the truck with him. He says, "You're gonna have to learn you can't run from the Ice Cream Man." Which is true. He knows Moped Tank's one weakness is that he can't actually run. However, Ice Cream Man doesn't bother chasing him. Moped Tank runs away and he hides in some bushes where he runs into Fifth Kid from earlier. Which, I think the odds of that are about as unlikely as the second half of this movie improving. Moped Tank walks Fifth Kid home, promising that his dad will know what to do about the situation, which of course he does, which is continue to argue about his affair as Moped Tank unsuccessfully tries to talk to them about it. And then they ground his ass for interrupting. The Ice Cream Man drives by the house like ominously. The next day, the mom goes outside and she finds ice cream scoops with like worms in them in the kid's shoes, and she's just like, "Wow, he's such a mess," as if this is a normal thing. Like, he wakes up at like 6 o'clock in the morning just to put ice cream in his shoes. Also, like 20 minutes ago, we had like a freezer truck full of body parts, and now you're doing these weird ice cream themed pranks. Ice Cream Man stalks Moped Tank through a supermarket like Robin Williams jumping out of Jumanji, as everybody in the store just completely ignores what's going on. Ice Cream Man gets stopped mid-chase by this lady so that he can help her shop. These tonal shifts that the movie does where it's like, oh, this is a tense scene, and then the joke immediately in the middle of it just kind of disrupts the tension at any given point. Moped Tank tells his mom about the murders, which, I mean, quite frankly, it's about time. It's like next day and she's just casually walking through the supermarket and you hadn't thought to tell her before then. Clint Axbad and Oblivious Cop show up to Ice Cream Man's Ice Cream Fortress. They tell their police officers to like search everything, like knock on things to see if they're hollow. Instead, the cops just kind of the place. They treat it like rock stars in a hotel room. Clint Axbad compliments the plastic sunflowers and he's like, "How do you grow those? Why are you doing this to me, movie?" Ice Cream Man tells them that they use cops as fertilizers. And, excuse me? It's like two of the most incoherent things I've ever seen, and they're just like back to back. Thinking that something might be going on here after he said he uses cops as fertilizers, they put a tail on him. We get the same flashback from 3 to 4 times earlier. Ice Cream Man opens up a hidden passage in the wall to let Stock Nerd out. You know, a hidden passage that they were specifically instructed to look for, just like 2 scenes earlier. Stock Nerd and Ice Cream Man bond over ice cream and bad days. This movie's so weird. In the middle of this scene, Ice Cream Man has like this just epiphany that the fifth kid has to actually be quiet in order for him to get away with his ice cream crimes. Ice crimes. It cuts to the fifth kid in church, and then it just decides to continue that. And in church, the preacher is doing a stigmata thing. What? What does this have to do with anything? Then they start strategizing in Rocket Kid's bedroom because they quickly realize that the police in this movie are absolutely useless, which I agree with them. What they need to do is catch him on film, they realize, so then they're going to take his brother's camera and then bring it to the police. Good plan, very doable, he just leaves stuff out anyways. The three meet up after dark with matching berets. We get another speech spelling out the Pied Piper metaphor in case the first 2 to 3 weren't clear to you. This one is, they hide behind their very not opaque bikes as the Ice Cream Man drives by and he doesn't notice them. They end up encountering him at a graveyard and he's pulling out this long black tarp, I guess. You think it's gonna be a body, but then it ends up being ice cream, and then the ice cream man ends up getting excluded from a party that his imaginary friends are having without him. There's no context I can give you to make that make sense. A lot of these filler scenes just kind of drag with this like jarring Castlevania almost music in the background, just punishing your eardrums. Preacher's Daughter and Rocket Kid lose Moped Tank, then Rocket Kid goes to get Moped Tank, and then what do you know? Preacher's Daughter sneaks into the back of the ice cream truck. Then Rocket Kid and Moped Tank, they see a car. They fire a rocket at it from their bike because you remember they're Team Rocket, all about it. Hits the cop car because the cop's like, "Is that a gun?" It just immediately cuts to them in the backseat of the cop car, though, explaining that, like, oh, he's got our friend. So they go to the preacher's house and they ask about it, but then it turns out that the daughter already had time to make it back home. It's not even like fake tension because it doesn't even get to the point of like you're in a threatening situation. It's just like these weird plot loops that you spend to like just occupy time. The only intentionally funny part of this entire movie happens right here, and it's my favorite part, and it's like a reprieve. So she goes to develop the camera footage at a photo store because it's the 90s, a long time ago. So the clerk there though, anytime she asks something, he has to like, it's gonna be $5.95. I cracked up. It might have just been because of like sitting through the first half of this movie, like any genuine attempt at humor. I applaud you. Oh, while we're waiting, the Pied Piper metaphor gets re-explained again, which is good because it's been like 2 to 3 scenes of them not saying it. So I was like, does this still apply anymore? Moped Tank Sr. is affairing with a fair woman, and then that gets interrupted when the ice cream man shows up and he backs his ice cream truck in the driveway so that Moped Tank Sr. can't get out. He's banging on the back of the ice cream truck. Finally, Ice Cream Man pops out of the shadows of the inner ice cream truck and hits him with a waffle iron and then kills him off screen. And then he turns him into an ice cream cone and tries to present him to a fair woman before she also gets murdered off screen. Older brother starts developing the camera footage, and I know what you're thinking. Oh, okay, we're gonna get some evidence. It's gonna be all over because then we can get the cops to take this serious. And then you hit the pause button on your remote to see how much time is left because you're like, maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, right? 30 minutes. What? How is there 30 minutes past this? Shouldn't this be like you got 10 minutes left? Let's start wrapping up some plot lines. Nope. Ice Cream Man and Stock Nerd make some ice cream together. We get reminded again that he uses people for ice cream as he has to dig out like the earrings of a fair woman. That's how we learn that she got killed off screen. Context clues. Clint Axbad and Oblivious Cop go to the insane asylum to get more information about Ice Cream Man. Fair. I think we're already at that point in the movie where you get the backstory explanation, even though most of it we know by inference because we saw the first scene and then all of the flashbacks prior to this. But either way, they talk to who we believe is the head doctor there, and he immediately goes into a spiel about the Ice Cream Man. Then he walks away laughing, and the movie builds up some real tension here as they follow through the halls after him. The inside of the insane asylum looks like downtown Gotham. There's stuff destroyed everywhere, there's graffiti. All the patients are walking around them and kind of like closing in, and you're like, oh man, they're not making it out of this jam. This is gonna be the one that gets them. They even split up, and you're like, who's gonna get? It's definitely Oblivious Cop. He makes it all the way back to the car, and then from the car he can see Clint Axbad kind of like walking through the building. When Clint Axbad is walking through the building, we get this. He just doesn't change pace. He's completely unaffected by all of the deranged people around him. He looks like he's walking through a music video. On ground floor, Oblivious Cop can see the window, and Clint Axbad like fires his gun. You're like, oh man, maybe he's in danger. He comes out, and the patients are just kind of doing like a music video claw thing at him. We're like, just, he points his gun at them, but they don't really care. They're just still doing their background musical thing. The Ice Cream Man chases after Team Rocket, and he of course catches Moped Tank. They run into older brother at this point, the remaining members of Team Rocket, which is Preacher's daughter and then Rocket Kid. He's like, yeah, we don't really have any evidence, so we're just gonna get in the car and we're gonna go there. But the last time we saw him, he was at the photography place printing the photos of the body parts in the back of the ice cream truck. Is that not evidence? Turns out older brother is a wannabe cop, so he just drags them all to the ice cream place. You would think, being a wannabe cop, that he might drop them off somewhere safely. Not even worried about it. He gets killed off screen. Reoccurring trend. What appears to be him walks out to the car, and we get the only on-screen kill, I think, when he kills the girlfriend. Preacher's daughter and Rocket Kid get out of the back of the car, and they run through this junkyard area. There's also this whole sequence where the ice cream man uses these two decapitated heads as like puppets, and it goes on for entirely too long. There's so many bad parts to this movie. It's like hard to just like compile. Ice Cream Man is sort of cornered in by Oblivious Cop and Clint Axbad. He closes the door to the ice cream truck, and they're like circling around it. They're like, keep the kid in sight. Somehow, impossibly, he actually ends up on the roof of the ice cream truck. You know it's impossibly because there's only really the two windows and then the door in the back, which you would have heard. He jumps down from the top of the ice cream truck and attacks them with ice cream scoopers, which incapacitates them. Nurse Lord cheers him on as he captures the kids, which I don't... Stock Nerd uses a picture of the original Mr. Frosty to convince the ice cream man that he is Mr. Frosty, and then lure him into a ice cream blender machine, which kills him. He says, "Who's the Pied Piper now?" Then we cut to sometime in the future, and Fifth Kid is a part of Team Rocket, but Stock Nerd isn't present. Turns out that Stock Nerd is in an insane asylum, and he's churning ice cream. The pattern repeats itself, which... The last scene I seen him before this, he was not on the side of the murderous ice cream man. This movie is like Sweeney Todd if it was written under the influence of mushrooms. It's like the writing team was having a contest to see who could have the worst idea, and then somehow they all won. Rick Sanchez uses this movie to cancel out his genius brainwaves. This movie is like an improv game at a teenager's birthday party. None of us really want to be here, and you're just making things more awkward by participating. This movie is like if every character was taken from a different script and you did nothing to fix the tonal differences between them. This movie is like a Mad Libs that was filled out by a gorilla who just recently learned sign language and has to rely on autocorrect to finish its sentences. This movie is like Silence of the Lambs if it was structurally designed to murder your brain cells. This is the first movie I've ever seen with no target audience. Like, who is this for? So what went wrong? Well, to break it down, we kind of have to look at everything. You have to take it piece by piece to really understand the depth of the ineptitude. Let's start with genre. So it's a comedy / horror. But it's never really successful at either one of them. It's not funny, not intentionally. I did start laughing towards the end of it, but it was mostly just because I couldn't believe that this thing actually existed. The only joke that it seems to have at its disposal is, look how dumb I made this character. Which isn't really a punchline, it's more of a setup. There's not really a single scene in the entire movie where it commits itself to the horror half of its genre typing. And there's never really a spot of any actual tension, despite how high the stakes should be. A good example of this is the supermarket scene. Moped Tank is being threatened by Ice Cream Man, in the supermarket, and it's sort of a defining moment because if you compare something like It, right, where it has like the library scene, a lot of the tension there is from what's going to happen, right? Because you can't be like super overt in that setting. Instead, the movie just kind of completely ignores this, and he acts as though the other people don't exist, and then the plot kind of caters to it as nobody else reacts. I mean, this guy is running around the store like a Karen looking for a manager. Every single character has a very limited repertoire of character traits, and very few of them are actually consistent. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about the villain in this movie. He's too ridiculous and inept to be like a credible threat. Like, I don't think anybody is having nightmares about that guy. Like, maybe the voice thing, like, is the scary part. Like, ooh, hurry. But then he's somehow not ridiculous enough to actually be like laughable or funny. It goes through this weird effort to make him sympathetic through all of the backstory and his relationship with the kid, which is weird because at the same time, you know, he's serving people Twilight Zone style. This inability to pick a lane of what it actually wants to do kind of haunts the entire runtime of Ice Cream Man. The soundtrack is an affront to human decency, and I feel like I've been headbutting a church bell for the last 30 minutes. The pacing of the movie is entirely broken and corrupts most of the plot. Like, the police are onto the Ice Cream Man within the first 20 minutes of the movie, so then it just has to juxtapose in a bunch of boring scenes in between, like, all of the plot conflict that should be happening throughout those points, which creates tonal dissonance, making it a very hard experience to like enjoy because you're never really sure like how you should feel about it. The movie doesn't even really pay attention to itself. There's a spot towards the end where like they have the camera roll and it could have resolved the entire plot, and we don't even get an explanation for what happened to it. Like, and that's the thing, it just introduces so much, but then it still feels the need to fill out a lot of its time spot with these repetitive things, such as the Pied Piper story or the inner family conflicts, which seem to happen much later than they actually should. I feel like when you do things right, it's kind of like the interpersonal conflicts mirror the horror that's going on, right? So in The Shining, for example, the fractures in their relationship are getting deeper as the haunting is getting deeper at like the same rate, so that those tensions kind of build together. In this one, it felt like, you know, when there's a TV show and it has like two writers and you're like, oh, this one's one of those guy episodes. It's how, that's like the two halves of this movie, and they don't really fit together to any like meaningful whole. I had such a bad time watching this movie.